Hey everyone, welcome to Webtoon BL. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to join the family. Let's enjoy some amazing BL stories together.
Chapter 1: The Velvet Rope. The first time I saw him, I forgot how to breathe. Sounds cliché now, writing it out like that. The kind of line you'd find scrawled on a bathroom wall or whispered in a bad movie. But I swear to you, every word of it is true. I was sitting in my usual booth at Obsidian, that dimly lit club tucked away in the industrial district where the city's elite go to pretend there's something they're not. I'd had 3 fingers of whiskey, neat, and I was watching the stage with the sort of detached boredom that comes from having too much money and not enough meaning. Then the lights dimmed. A slow, sultry bass line pulsed through the speakers, and he walked out. He wasn't like the others. I'd seen dozens of dancers grace that stage. Beautiful people, all of them, trained to move in ways that made wallets open and tongues loosen. But this one was different. He moved like water, like smoke, like something that wasn't quite human and didn't care to pretend otherwise. His name was Kai. I learned that later, after I'd asked the bartender, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. "Just Kai," the bartender said with a knowing smirk. No last name, no details. Just that single syllable that I'd find myself repeating like a prayer in the lonely hours of the night. He had dark hair that fell across his forehead in artful waves, eyes the color of aged whiskey, and a body that was all lean muscle and graceful lines. But it wasn't his physical beauty that hooked me, though God knows that was plenty. It was the way he looked at the crowd, not with desperation or hunger or the practiced seduction of someone working for tips. He looked at us like we were the ones on display, like he was the one judging us. That night, I tipped him $500. He didn't even blink, just gave me a slow, knowing smile and moved on to the next patron. I was hooked. For 6 months, I went back to Obsidian. Every Thursday night, like clockwork, I'd sit in my booth, order my whiskey, and wait for Kai to take the stage. I watched him dance, watched the way fabric clung to his skin and then fell away, watched the way his hips moved in hypnotic circles that made my mouth go dry. I asked for private dances, dozens of them. Each time, he'd lead me to one of those velvet curtain booths in the back, and for 15 minutes, the world would shrink to just the 2 of us. But here's the thing about private dances at Obsidian. They're not really private. There are rules. Bouncers who check in every few minutes. Cameras in the corners. A strict, no-touching policy that had me clenching my fists in my lap every single time. I wanted more. I wanted him. Not the version of him that performed for strangers in a dimly lit room, but the real one. The one who laughed at something the bartender said before his set. The one who occasionally looked up at the ceiling during a slow song. His expression far away, like he was somewhere else entirely. I tried to talk to him after his shifts, but he was always surrounded by people. Other dancers, patrons who wanted just one more dance, the club's manager who seemed to have an unhealthy interest in where Kai went after hours. I'd catch his eye sometimes, and he'd give me that slow smile, but then he'd disappear through a door marked employees only, and I'd be left standing there like an idiot. I needed a different angle, something that would get me past the velvet rope and into whatever world he inhabited when the lights came up. I just didn't expect that angle to come from a stack of internship applications. Chapter 2: The Interview. Let me be clear about something. I didn't plan this. If anyone ever suggests that I orchestrated the whole thing, they're wrong. Because when I walked into my office that Tuesday morning, I had no idea that my entire world was about to tilt sideways. So the final round of candidates is in the conference room. My HR director, Margaret, said as she handed me a stack of resumes. 3 of them, all promising. "I think you'll be impressed." I nodded, barely glancing at the papers. Vanguard Industries was my company. Had been since my father handed over the reins 2 years ago, though sometimes it still felt like I was wearing someone else's suit. At 29, I was one of the youngest CEOs in the city, and I'd worked damn hard to earn that position. But days like this, reviewing interns, sitting through mind-numbing presentations, made me miss the days when I could just disappear into a club and watch a beautiful stranger dance. I walked into the conference room with Margaret trailing behind me, already mentally composing the email I'd need to send to our Tokyo partners. I didn't look up at the 3 candidates sitting in the sleek leather chairs. Not at first. Then I heard him speak. "Good morning, Mr. Vane. Thank you for this opportunity." My head snapped up so fast I felt something pop in my neck. And there he was. Kai. He was wearing a gray suit that fit him perfectly. Tailored, expensive-looking, nothing like the scraps of fabric he wore on stage. His dark hair was combed back from his forehead, and his whiskey-colored eyes were wide with recognition. No, not recognition. Horror. He knew exactly who I was. The other 2 candidates, a young woman with bright red hair and a man who looked like he'd just graduated from some Ivy League, were saying something about their qualifications, but I couldn't hear a word. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. All I could see was Kai, sitting in my conference room, wearing a suit and a name tag that read, Kai-chun. Chan. I finally had a last name. Julian. Margaret's voice cut through my daze. "Are you all right? You've gone pale." I forced myself to look away from him, to focus on the stack of resumes in front of me. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the table. "I'm fine," I said, my voice coming out rougher than intended. Let's begin." The next 20 minutes were a blur. The Ivy League guy, Bradley something, talked about his GPA and his summer internships and his father who just happened to know my father. The red-haired woman, Jasmine, was sharp and quick and asked intelligent questions about our supply chain logistics. But I barely heard either of them. I was watching Kai. He was good. Better than good. When it was his turn to speak, he sat up straight and spoke with a confidence that seemed impossible given the circumstances. He was a senior at City University, majoring in business with a concentration in finance. His grades were excellent. His references were solid. And when he talked about why he wanted to work at Vanguard, there was a hunger in his voice that had nothing to do with the club or the stage or the way he moved his hips. "I want to build something," he said, his eyes meeting mine for just a second before darting away. "I want to prove that I'm more than what people expect me to be." Those words hit me somewhere deep in my chest. When the interviews were over, Margaret turned to me expectantly. "Well, what do you think?" I should have recused myself. I should have admitted that I knew one of the candidates, knew him in a way that would make any fair hiring process impossible. I should have excused myself and let Margaret make the decision. But I didn't. "I want to speak with Mr. Chun. Privately." Margaret raised an eyebrow but nodded. She ushered the other 2 candidates out, and the door clicked shut behind them. And then it was just the 2 of us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The conference room was silent except for the hum of the HVAC system and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. Kai sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the table in front of him, his expression carefully blank. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched, the slight tremor in his fingers. "So," I said finally, leaning back in my chair. "Kai-chan." He flinched, just a little. "Mr. Vane. You can call me Julian." "Considering," I gestured vaguely, not sure how to finish that sentence. "Considering I've watched you take off your clothes. Considering I've tipped you more money than most people make in a month. Considering I've dreamed about you every single night for the past 6 months." Kai's composure cracked. His shoulders slumped, and when he looked at me again, there was something raw and desperate in his eyes. "Look," he said, his voice low. "I know what you're thinking, and you're right, I shouldn't have applied. I should have known there was a chance you'd be here. But I didn't think the CEO would actually be involved in intern hiring. I thought I'd be safe." "Safe from what?" "Safe from you finding out." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Safe from having to explain why someone like me, a stripper, a dancer, a whatever you want to call it, is applying for a corporate internship. I know how this looks. I know what you must think of me. I think," I said slowly, "that you're the most captivating person I've ever seen." He blinked. "What?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "I've been coming to Obsidian for 6 months, Kai. Every Thursday, I sit in the same booth, order the same whiskey, and I watch you. And every single time, I ask myself what someone like you is doing in a place like that. His face went pale, then flushed red. I'm not judging you, I said quickly. I'm trying to understand. For a long moment he just stared at me. Then, slowly, the fight seemed to drain out of him. He slumped back in his chair and ran a hand through his hair, messing up that careful combed-back look. I'm doing it for tuition, he said quietly. My parents, they don't have anything. They worked their whole lives to put me through school. But when my dad got sick last year, the medical bills ate up everything. I couldn't just drop out, I was too close to finishing. So I found another way. Obsidian. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. The money's good. Better than good. I can make in one night what I'd make in a week at any other job. And the hours work with my class schedule. It's not. He trailed off, swallowing hard. It's not what I want to do forever. But it's what I have to do right now. I sat there, processing this. The man I'd been fantasizing about for months, the one who moved like sin and looked at the world like he owned it, was just a kid trying to get through school. A kid who'd been dealt a bad hand and was playing it the only way he knew how. What if you didn't have to? I heard myself ask. Kai looked up, confused. What? What if you didn't have to dance at Obsidian anymore? What if someone paid your tuition? All of it. And gave you a job here, a real job, doing something that actually matters. His eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I should have thought it through. I should have considered the implications, the power dynamics, the ethics of what I was about to propose. But sitting there, looking at him, at the vulnerability he was trying so hard to hide and the pride he couldn't quite suppress, I made a decision. I'm saying that I want to help you. No strings attached. I pay your tuition, your fees, whatever you need to finish school. In return, you take the internship and prove that you're as good as your resume says you are. Kai stared at me like I'd grown a second head. That's insane. You don't even know me. I know enough. You know what I do for money. You know what I look like in a G-string and body glitter. That's not the same as knowing me. It's a start. He shook his head, pushing back from the table. No, this is some kind of power play. You want something from me. I don't know what it is yet, but you want something. I stood up, moving around the table until I was standing in front of him. He had to tilt his head back to look at me, and in the harsh fluorescent light of the conference room, I could see every fleck of gold in his eyes. You're right, I said. I do want something, but it's not what you think. Then what is it? I reached out, slowly, giving him time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair back from his forehead. He went absolutely still beneath my touch, his breath catching in his throat. I want to know you, I said. The real you, not the one on stage, not the one who performs for strangers. I want to know what makes you laugh, what keeps you up at night, what you dream about when you think no one's watching. That's not a fair trade, he whispered. Tuition for my privacy? Then call it a gift. No trade, no exchange. Just me helping you because I want to. His eyes searched mine, looking for the catch, the trick, the hidden knife. I let him look. I had nothing to hide, not from him. Why? He asked finally. Why would you do this for a stranger? I thought about lying. I thought about making up some noble excuse about wanting to invest in the next generation, about corporate social responsibility, about all the bullshit reasons rich people give to make themselves feel better about hoarding their wealth. But I looked at Kai, at the exhaustion hiding behind his careful mask, at the way his hands were still trembling slightly, and I decided to tell him the truth. Because I've been watching you for 6 months, and in all that time, I've never seen you smile. Not once. Not a real smile. And I want to be the person who changes that. Chapter 3. The deal. He said yes. I'm still not entirely sure why. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the way I looked at him, like he was something precious, something worth protecting. Or maybe it was just that he had no other choice. But he said yes. We met the next day at a coffee shop near the university, neutral ground, he insisted, and I didn't argue. He showed up in jeans and a hoodie, his hair damp from the shower, and he looked so young that it made my chest ache. On stage, under the lights, he was untouchable, otherworldly. But here, in the pale morning light, he was just a kid. A beautiful, tired, frightened kid. "I looked you up," he said as he slid into the booth across from me. Julian Vane, 30 years old, CEO of Vanguard Industries, net worth somewhere in the billions. No criminal record, no scandals, no social media presence to speak of. "You're either a saint or very good at hiding your bodies." I laughed. A real laugh, the kind that surprised even me. "I'll let you decide which." He didn't smile, but something in his expression softened. I also looked up the internship. It's competitive. 60 spots for over 3,000 applicants. There's no way I would have gotten it on my own. "You don't know that." "I do know that." He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, and I noticed that his nails were bitten down to the quick. Bradley Westbrook's father donated a building to the business school. Jasmine Al-Rashid's mother is a state senator. And he gestured at himself. "I'm a stripper who works nights and barely sleeps and lives in a studio apartment that smells like Chinese takeout. A stripper who has a 3.9 GPA, 3 internship offers from other companies, and enough drive to carry you through anything," I countered. "Don't sell yourself short, Kai. You earned your place in that interview room." He looked at me for a long moment, his whiskey-colored eyes searching mine. Then he nodded almost imperceptibly. "So what's the catch?" he asked. "There's always a catch. I've been thinking about this all night, tossing and turning in my king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to say what I wanted without sounding like a predator." "There's no catch," I said carefully. "I'll pay for the rest of your tuition, this semester and next, plus any fees or books or whatever else you need. You'll take the internship, work hard, and prove that you belong there. At the end of the year, if you've done well, I'll make sure you have a full-time offer." Kai's eyes narrowed. "And in exchange? I want you to spend time with me." Silence. The coffee shop hummed around us. The hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of other conversations, the clatter of cups on saucers. But between us, there was nothing but tension. "What kind of time?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Not like that." I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated with myself for not being able to find the right words. "I mean, I want to get to know you. Dinner, conversation, the kinds of things you do with someone you're interested in." "You're interested in me. I've been interested in you for 6 months, Kai. You know that." He looked away, staring out the window at the rain-slicked street. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. "This feels like a transaction. Like you're buying me." "I'm not." "You are, though." He turned back to face me, and there was anger in his eyes now. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, quiet kind that comes from being cornered too many times. "You're offering me money in exchange for my time, my attention, maybe more eventually. How is that different from what I do at the club?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "Because I'm not asking you to perform," I said finally. "I'm asking you to be yourself. No stage, no lights, no persona. Just you and me, figuring out if there's something here worth exploring. And if there isn't, then we shake hands and go our separate ways. You keep the tuition money. It's yours regardless of what happens between us. No takebacks, no regrets." He studied me for a long time, his expression unreadable. The rain picked up outside, drumming against the window, and somewhere across the room, someone laughed at something funny on their phone. Normal sounds, everyday sounds. But nothing about this moment felt normal. "You're serious," he said finally. "You're actually serious about this." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." He let out a breath, a long, shaky exhale, and something in his posture changed. The tension didn't disappear, but it shifted, became something else, something almost like curiosity. "How would this work?" he asked. "Logistically, I have classes. I have the internship. He trailed off, and I saw the exact moment he remembered that he also had a job at Obsidian, that he couldn't just quit without consequences. "I've thought about that," I said. "The club, you can't go back there. Not because I'm trying to control you, but because I don't want to share you. Not anymore. I know that's selfish. I know I have no right to ask. But I'm asking anyway. So I just quit? Walk away from the only source of income one have while I wait for your check to clear. No. You let me handle it. His eyes widened. What does that mean? It means I'll buy out your contract. I'll pay whatever penalty you'd owe for leaving early. I'll make sure the club doesn't come after you. And then you'll never have to set foot in that place again. Kai stared at me like I just offered to buy him the moon. Do you even know how much that would cost? The penalty alone is, I don't care what it costs. Why? Why would you do all of this for someone you barely know? I reached across the table and took his hand. He flinched just for a second and then he let me. His fingers were cold. His palm calloused in a way that his stage persona would never reveal. Because I think you're extraordinary, I said softly. Because I think you've been surviving for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to live. And because I want to be the person who reminds you. For the first time since I'd met him, Kai's eyes glistened with something that looked like tears. He blinked them back quickly, but I'd already seen. You're going to break my heart, he whispered. I'm going to try very hard not to. He pulled his hand away. Gently, this time not like he was escaping but like he was giving himself a moment to think. He picked up his coffee cup, took a long sip and set it down again. 1 month, he said. 1 month of what? 1 month of whatever this is. Of dinners and conversation and you trying to figure out if I'm worth all this trouble. At the end of the month, we reassess. If you still want to pay my tuition, fine. If not, I'll figure something else out. That's not. It's the only way I can do this. His voice was firm now, certain in a way it hadn't been all morning. I'm not going to be your kept boy, Julian. I'm not a pet you can buy and put in a pretty cage. But I'm willing to give you a chance 1 month to prove that you mean what you say. After that, we'll see. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that 1 month wasn't enough, that I needed more time, that the thought of losing him after only 30 days made something cold settle in my chest. But I looked at him, at the stubborn set of his jaw, the fire in his eyes, the way he held himself like he was ready to bolt at any moment, and I knew that pushing for more would only make him run. 1 month, I agreed. Starting when? This weekend. I need to give notice at the club, pack up my apartment, all of that. Pack up your apartment? He smiled. Not the slow, seductive smile he used on stage, but something smaller. Something almost shy. You didn't think I could commute to your mansion from my studio, did you? If I'm going to spend a month being courted by a billionaire, I might as well do it in comfort. I laughed again, the sound surprising me. You're moving in? For the month. That's part of the deal. He shrugged. Like it was nothing. Like he hadn't just turned my entire world upside down. I want to see what it's like, Julian. Living in your world. Being around you when you're not in a boardroom or a club. I want to know if the fantasy is better than the reality. And if it's not, then we'll both know. He stood up, pulling his hoodie tighter around himself. I'll text you my address. Send a truck on Saturday, I don't have much. And Julian, I looked up at him, my heart pounding in my chest. Don't make me regret this. And then he was gone, disappearing through the coffee shop door and into the rain, leaving me sitting there with a cold cup of coffee and a future that suddenly seemed a lot more interesting than it had 24 hours ago. Chapter 4. The Arrival. Saturday morning arrived like a reckoning. I'd been up since 4, unable to sleep, pacing my penthouse like a caged animal. The mansion, because yes, it was a mansion, a sprawling glass and steel thing perched on the city's highest hill, felt different somehow. Bigger, emptier, like it had been holding its breath, waiting for someone to fill it. I told my staff to take the weekend off. My housekeeper, my cook, my driver, all of them gone. I wanted privacy for this. I wanted to be the one to open the door when Kai arrived, to show him around myself, to see his face when he saw the place for the first time. The moving truck showed up at 9. Kai wasn't in it. He's coming separately, the driver said, shrugging when I asked. Said he had something to take care of first. I stood on my front steps, watching the movers carry boxes inside. And there weren't many of them, just a few cardboard containers and a duffel bag that looked like it had seen better days. This was the sum total of Kai Chen's life. A few boxes of clothes and books and God knows what else. All of it fitting into the back of a truck that would have been barely half full even if he'd brought everything he owned. It made me want to give him the world. He showed up at 11, pulling up the long driveway in a battered sedan that had definitely seen better days. I watched from the window as he sat in the car for a long moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel, his head bowed. He was working up the courage to come inside. I went to meet him at the door. He looked different than he had at the coffee shop. Different than he had at the club. He was wearing dark jeans and a fitted black sweater, his hair styled back from his face, and he looked nervous, uncertain in a way that made him seem younger than his 22 years. "Hey," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Hey." He didn't move from the car. "This place is insane. It's just a house. It's a castle." He finally got out, slamming the door behind him. "My entire apartment could fit in your foyer." "Probably." I pushed off from the doorframe and walked toward him, stopping a few feet away. "You okay?" He laughed. A short, breathless sound. "No, I'm not okay. I'm standing in front of a billionaire's mansion, about to move in with him for a month, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I should be okay. I should be anything but okay. You could still back out. Could I?" He looked up at me, and there was something vulnerable in his eyes. Something raw. "Could I really? Because I quit my job. I gave up my apartment. I told my friends I was going on some extended trip. If I back out now, I have nothing. Nowhere to go. You'd have the tuition money. You could find another place. Another job. But not another you." He said it quietly, like he wasn't sure he wanted me to hear. "I've been thinking about this all week, Julian. About what you said. About wanting to know me. And I realized no one's ever wanted that before. They want the dancer, the fantasy, the person on stage who gives them permission to forget their real lives for 15 minutes. But you want the mess, the exhaustion, the 3 a.m. panic attacks about finals and the way I cry at dog commercials and the fact that I can't cook to save my life. I like dogs." He laughed again, and this time it was real. "That's what you took from that? I'm a very literal person." He shook his head, but he was smiling now. A real smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Okay, I'm here. Let's do this." I showed him inside. The tour took 45 minutes. The mansion had 6 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a home theater, a gym, a wine cellar, and a kitchen that would make professional chefs weep with envy. Kai walked through it all in a daze, his fingers trailing over countertops and door frames like he was trying to convince himself it was real. "This is ridiculous," he said when we reached the master suite. "This bedroom is bigger than my whole apartment. Want to see the view?" I led him to the window wall that faced the city, and he stopped short. The skyline stretched out before us, all glass and steel and twinkling lights, even in the daylight. From up here you could see everything, the whole city spread out like a map. "I could get used to this," he murmured. "That's the idea." He turned to look at me, and suddenly the space between us felt very small, very charged. His eyes searched mine, and I could see him trying to figure out what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what I wanted from him. "Your room is down the hall," I said, taking a step back. I had it prepared. "It's not as big as this one, but you're not putting me in the master suite? Not unless you want to be there." He considered this for a moment, then shook his head. "Down the hall is fine. But Julian." "Yeah. Thank you for all of this. For not making it weird." I wanted to tell him that it was already weird, that I'd never done anything like this before, never opened my home to a stranger, never felt so completely out of my depth. But instead, I just nodded and pointed him toward his room. "Get settled," I said. "I'll make lunch. You can cook? I can make sandwiches. It's basically the same thing." He laughed again, and I decided that was my new favorite sound in the world. Chapter 5, the first night. Dinner was awkward. I tried to make something more impressive than sandwiches, pasta maybe or a salad, but my culinary skills were limited to heating things up and hoping for the best. So I'd ordered from a restaurant instead, having one of my assistants pick up food from a place downtown that Kai had mentioned liking. "How did you know about that restaurant?" he asked, poking at his pad thai. "I asked your friends." He nearly choked. "You what?" "Not in a creepy way," I said quickly. I wanted to make sure you'd have things you liked here. So I looked up your social media, found some people you follow, and sent a few messages." "You sent messages to my friends asking what food I like?" "I sent messages to your friends asking what food you like, yes." "Is that weird?" "Yes, Julian. That's very weird." I winced. "I'm sorry. I didn't. It's also kind of sweet." He took a bite of his noodles, chewing thoughtfully. In a stalkerish, borderline unhinged way. "That's better. It's definitely something." He grinned. Actually grinned, his whole face lighting up, and I felt something loosen in my chest. "What else did you find out?" I considered lying. I considered pretending that I'd only asked about food and then stopped, because that's what a normal person would have done. But Kai had asked for honesty, and I was determined to give it to him. "You're a business major with a minor in art history," I said. "You grew up in a small town about 3 hours from here. Your mother works at a hospital, your father is a mechanic, and they have no idea what you do to pay for school. You have a dog named Machi who lives with your parents because your apartment doesn't allow pets. You're allergic to peanuts, you're afraid of heights, and you cry at the end of It's a Wonderful Life every single time." Kai had stopped eating. He was just staring at me, his chopsticks frozen halfway to his mouth. "How?" he whispered. "I told you. Social media. Your friends. A few public records. Nothing that wasn't already out there, I promise. That's so much. That's so much to know about someone you barely know." "I know." I set down my fork, suddenly not hungry anymore. "And I'm sorry if it's too much. I wanted to understand you, to see you. Not the person on stage, but the person underneath. And this was the only way I knew how." Kai was quiet for a long time. The candles flickered between us, casting dancing shadows across his face. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "My parents think I work at a coffee shop. That's what I tell them. That I'm a barista, making lattes and saving up for a better apartment. They'd die if they knew the truth. They don't have to know. They don't. And they won't. But it's hard, you know? Lying to them every time we talk. Telling them I'm fine when I'm barely holding it together. That's why I cry at It's a Wonderful Life. Because George Bailey gets to come home. Because he has people who love him, who show up for him. And he doesn't even realize how lucky he is until he almost loses everything. I wanted to reach across the table and take his hand. I wanted to pull him into my arms and tell him that everything would be okay, that he didn't have to lie anymore, that I would show up for him if he let me. But I didn't. I stayed in my seat, giving him the space he'd asked for, and I listened. "My dad's insurance didn't cover everything," he continued. "The hospital bills, the treatments, the medications, it added up to more than they could ever afford. So I started looking for ways to make money. Fast money. And someone told me about Obsidian. Who? It doesn't matter. They're gone now. But they said the tips were good and they were right. For a while, I was making more in a night than I'd make in a month at any other job. Enough to cover my tuition and send money home without my parents asking questions. But it wasn't enough." He shook his head. "It's never enough. The club takes a cut and the dancers have to pay for their own outfits and other things. And the hours are brutal. I dance from 10 to 2, then go home and study until 5, then sleep for a few hours before class. I was running on caffeine and adrenaline, and I told myself it was temporary. That I just had to make it to graduation. And now." He looked up at me, and there were tears in his eyes. Not falling, just gathering, making his whiskey-colored irises look like liquid gold. "And now you're here, offering me a way out that I don't deserve and can't repay. And I don't know what to do with that, Julian. I don't know how to accept help without waiting for the other shoe to drop. This isn't a trap, Kai. It feels like one. It feels like you're being too nice, too generous, And eventually you're going to want something I can't give you. What can't you give me? He didn't answer. He just looked at me. His expression a complicated mix of fear and longing and something else I couldn't quite name. Can I tell you a secret? He asked finally. Anything. When I'm on stage, dancing, I look for you in the crowd. I always have. From the very first night. There's something about the way you watch me. Like I'm the only person in the room. Like nothing else exists. And I thought maybe you saw me. Not the dancer, but the person underneath. I do see you. I know. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, annoyed at himself for crying. That's what scares me. The rest of the meal passed in a kind of fragile peace. We talked about smaller things, his classes, my work, the ridiculousness of the mansion's heating system. He told me about Machi, his dog, and showed me pictures on his phone. I told him about my father, about taking over the company, about the loneliness that came with being at the top. And somewhere between dessert and coffee, something shifted between us. The awkwardness faded, replaced by something warmer. Something almost like intimacy. We ended up on the couch in the living room, a movie playing on the massive screen that neither of us was watching. Kai had curled up on one end, his legs tucked beneath him, and I was on the other, trying very hard not to stare at him. I should go to bed, he said finally, his voice sleepy. It's late. It's only 10. It's been a long day. He stretched, and I watched the movement of his body with an intensity that probably bordered on obsessive. Thank you for dinner, Julian, and for listening. Thank you for telling me. He stood up, and I stood with him. We were close, closer than we'd been all night, and I could smell his shampoo, something clean and floral and utterly him. Good night, he whispered. Good night, Kai. He started to walk away, then stopped, turned back, and before I could process what was happening, he stepped forward and pressed his lips to my cheek. It wasn't a kiss, not really, just the barest brush of skin against skin. But it sent electricity racing down my spine, made my heart stutter in my chest. Thank you, he said again, and then he was gone, disappearing down the hallway toward his room, leaving me standing alone in the living room with my hand pressed to my cheek and a smile I couldn't quite suppress. Chapter 6. The routine. The first week was a dance of its own kind. We fell into a routine. Not the kind I'd expected, full of tension and desire and stolen glances. Something softer, something almost domestic. Kai would wake up early, make himself coffee in the ridiculous kitchen, and study at the massive dining table while the sun rose over the city. I'd join him around 7, and we'd eat breakfast together in a silence that felt comfortable rather than awkward. Then we'd go our separate ways. He had classes and study groups and the internship orientation to attend. I had meetings and conference calls and a company to run. But we always found our way back to each other in the evenings, sharing dinner, watching movies, talking about everything and nothing. On the 5th night, he asked me about my father. What was he like? We were sitting on the patio, looking out at the city lights. Kai had a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. The nights were getting colder, and I was nursing a glass of whiskey. Complicated, I said finally. He was a good businessman. Better than me, probably. But he wasn't warm. Not with me, not with anyone. He loved my mother, I think, in his own way. But he didn't know how to show it. Is that why you're like this? Like what? Closed off. Careful. He turned to look at me, and in the dim light, his eyes seemed to glow. You watch everything like you're waiting for it to fall apart. Like you're already planning for the disaster before it happens. I considered denying it. But Kai had been honest with me. More honest than anyone had been in years, and he deserved the same in return. My father taught me that love was transactional, I said. That people only stay as long as you have something they want. My mother stayed because he paid for her lifestyle. The board members stay because I make them money. Even my friends. I trailed off, shaking my head. I don't have friends. Not really. I have business associates and strategic alliances and people who want something from me. That's not true. It's been true my whole life. Until now. Kai was quiet for a moment. Then he reached over and took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. I don't want anything from you, Julian. You want tuition. That's not the same thing. That's a gift you offered. I didn't ask for it. And I'm not staying because of it. I'm staying because... He paused, and I could see him working up the courage to say something important. I'm staying because I want to, because you make me feel safe. Because when I'm with you, I don't have to pretend. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Kai, I know this is supposed to be an arrangement. 1 month, then reassess. But I don't want to reassess, Julian. I want to stay. I want to see where this goes. I set down my whiskey, turning to face him fully. His hand was still in mine, warm and real and grounding. What are you saying? I'm saying that I like you. That I've liked you for longer than I want to admit. And I'm tired of pretending that this is just about money or convenience or some deal we made in a coffee shop. He squeezed my fingers, and his eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. I want to try, really try. If you do, I should have been careful. I should have thought about the implications, about the power dynamics, about all the reasons this could go horribly wrong. But Kai was looking at me like I was something precious, something worth fighting for. And I couldn't think about anything except the way his lips parted slightly when he breathed. I leaned in. He met me halfway. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, exploratory, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. But then Kai made a small sound in the back of his throat, and something in me snapped. I pulled him closer, one hand tangling in his hair, the other pressing against the small of his back. He melted into me, his fingers clutching at my shirt, and the world narrowed to just the two of us. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Wow, Kai whispered. Yeah, I agreed, because I couldn't think of anything more eloquent. He laughed. That real laugh, the one that crinkled his eyes and rested his forehead against mine. I didn't expect that, he said. I didn't either. Was it okay? I pulled back just enough to look at him. His lips were kiss-swollen, his cheeks flushed, his eyes wide and wondering. He was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. It was perfect, I said. You're perfect. I'm not. You are to me. He kissed me again, and this time it wasn't soft at all. Chapter 7. The Cracks. For 2 weeks, everything was wonderful. We fell into a rhythm that felt almost like a real relationship. Kai would study at the dining table, and I'd work from home as much as possible, stealing glances at him over my laptop screen. We cooked together, or rather, I watched him cook while he complained about my complete lack of kitchen skills. We watched movies on the couch, and somewhere around the second week, he stopped sitting on the opposite end and started curling up against my side. We didn't have sex. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I wanted something else more. I wanted him to trust me, to feel safe with me, to know that this wasn't just about physical attraction, that I cared about him as a person, not just a body. So we kissed. A lot. And we touched. Hands, arms, shoulders, the small of his back. But we never went further. Every time things started to get heated, I'd pull back and ask if he was sure. And every time, he'd look at me with something like gratitude mixed with frustration. You're going to kill me, he said one night, after I gently moved his hand away from my belt. I'm trying to do the right thing. The right thing is very annoying. I laughed, pulling him closer. You'll thank me later. Will I? I hope so. But cracks were starting to form. I noticed them in small ways at first. Kai checking his phone and going pale. Kai staring off into space during dinner. Kai waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to fall back asleep. I asked him what was wrong. He said nothing. I asked him again. He said he was just stressed about finals. I didn't believe him, but I didn't push. I told myself he'd come to me when he was ready. I told myself that trust took time. I was wrong. It happened on a Thursday, my usual obsidian night, though I hadn't been back since Kai moved in. I came home from a late meeting to find the mansion dark, which was strange. Kai was usually home by 7, the lights blazing, some terrible reality show playing on the TV. Kai! I called out as I walked through the door. No answer. I checked the living room. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. His bedroom. Empty. My heart started to race. I found him on the patio, sitting on the edge of the couch, his head in his hands. He wasn't crying, but he was close. I could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the way his breath came in short, sharp gasps. Kai! I knelt in front of him, taking his hands. What happened? He looked up at me, and his eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. My dad, he said, his voice cracking. He's in the hospital. He had a heart attack this morning. My mom called while I was in class, and I didn't. He swallowed hard. I didn't have my phone on. I didn't know until an hour ago. God, Kai, is he okay? He's stable. They're keeping him for observation. But the hospital bills. He shook his head, pulling his hands away from mine. They're already drowning in debt. Another stay, another procedure, they can't afford it. I can't afford it. You don't have to. He looked at me, and there was something in his expression that made my blood run cold. Something hard. Something angry. Don't, he said. Don't what? Don't offer to pay for it. Don't be the hero who swoops in with his checkbook and fixes everything. I can't owe you more than I already do. Kai, this isn't about owing me. This is about your father's life. I know that. He stood up abruptly, pacing the length of the patio. I know that, Julian. But every time something goes wrong, you just throw money at it. My tuition, my contract, my rent. And I let you because I don't have a choice. But I can't. I can't keep taking from you. It's killing me. Taking from me? Kai, I offered. Every single time I offered. Because you can. Because you have more money than God, and you don't know what to do with it except spend it on broken people like me. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and painful. Is that what you think? I asked quietly. That I see you as a project? A charity case? I don't know what you see me as. He stopped pacing, turning to face me. I thought I did. For a few weeks, I thought maybe you actually cared about me. Maybe this was real. But now my dad is in the hospital, and the first thing you do is offer money, and I can't. What was I supposed to do? Offer condolences? Hold your hand? I can do those things too, Kai. But I can also help. Why is that a bad thing? Because it makes me feel like a whore. The word echoed in the darkness, and Kai immediately looked horrified that he'd said it. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I stood up, keeping my distance. And I understand. I really do. You've spent years trading your body for money, and now you feel like you're trading your dignity for the same thing. But that's not what this is, Kai. That's never what this was. Then what is it? It's love. He froze. I love you, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I've loved you since the first time I saw you on that stage. And I know that's insane. I know we've only known each other for a month, and most of that time has been weird and complicated and full of boundaries. But I love you, Kai, and I want to help your father because he's important to you, and you're important to me. Not because I want something in return. Kai stared at me, his lips parted, his eyes wide. You can't, he whispered. You can't love me. You don't even know me. I know you're stubborn. I know you're proud. I know you pretend to be tough. But you cry at dog commercials and you sing in the shower and you leave your socks on the bathroom floor even though I've asked you not to. I know you're terrified of being trapped, of being owned, of being seen as something you're not. And I know that none of that scares me. It just makes me love you more. He was crying now. Really crying, tears streaming down his face. I wanted to go to him, to hold him, to make it better. But I stayed where I was, letting him feel whatever he needed to feel. You're an idiot, he said finally, his voice thick. Probably. A complete idiot. Almost certainly. He walked toward me, closing the distance between us. When he was close enough to touch, he reached up and placed his hands on either side of my face. I love you too, he said. And I hate it. I hate that you make me feel safe. I hate that I want to trust you. I hate that every time I try to push you away, you just stay. I'll always stay. You don't know that. Then let me prove it. He kissed me, hard and desperate and full of all the things he couldn't say. And when we finally pulled apart, he was still crying, but he was smiling too. "Okay," he said. "Okay, help my dad. And then help me figure out how to stop being so scared all the time. That I can do." We stood there for a long time, holding each other in the darkness. The city spread out below us like a field of stars. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Chapter 8. The Truth. The next morning, I wired enough money to Kai's parents to cover his father's hospital bills and then some. He protested, of course he did, but I could see the relief in his eyes when I showed him the confirmation. "They're going to ask questions," he said, scrolling through his phone. "They're going to want to know where this came from. So tell them the truth. That I'm living with a billionaire who's in love with me? Tell them you have a friend who cares about you and wants to help. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. Just don't lie to them anymore, Kai. You've been carrying that weight for too long." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. He called his mother that afternoon. I wasn't there for the conversation. I gave him privacy, sitting in my office with the door closed, but I heard his voice through the walls, soft and shaky and so full of love it made my chest ache. When he came to find me, his eyes were red again, but he was smiling. "She wants to meet you," he said. "My mom. She says anyone who helps her family like that deserves a home-cooked meal. I'd like that. Even if it means driving 3 hours to a town that doesn't have a single traffic light? Especially then." He laughed, curling up in the chair across from my desk. The sunlight streamed through the window behind him, catching the gold flecks in his hair. "We need to talk about something," he said, his voice turning serious. "About the club. What about it? I told you I quit, and I did. But there's something I didn't tell you. Something I've been trying to figure out how to say." My stomach clenched. "What is it?" He was quiet for a moment, his fingers twisting together in his lap. "The manager at Obsidian, Damon. He didn't want to let me go. When I told him I was quitting, he got angry. Said I owed him. Said I couldn't just walk away." "What do you mean you owed him?" Kai's face paled. "He helped me. When I first started, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know the rules, the etiquette, any of it. He took me under his wing, showed me how to work the crowd, how to maximize tips. And in exchange for what? He took a cut, a bigger cut than the other dancers. He said it was fair since he was doing me a favor. But the longer I stayed, the more he took. And when I tried to leave, he said I still owed him. For training, for opportunities, for protecting me." I could feel my hands shaking with rage. "How much?" $50,000. The number hung in the air between us, ugly and impossible. "Kai, I know. It's insane. I never should have agreed to it. But I was desperate, Julian. I needed the money, and he was the only one offering help. I thought I could pay him back eventually. I thought once I graduated and got a real job, I could make it right. And now I don't know what to do. He's been calling me, texting me, saying if I don't pay up, he'll come find me. He'll make trouble for me, for my family, for..." He trailed off, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "For you. He threatened you? He said people like me don't get happy endings. He said if I thought I could just walk away and start over, I was wrong. He said he'd make sure everyone knew what I really am." I stood up, moving around the desk to kneel in front of his chair. I took his hands in mine, holding them tight. "Listen to me," I said. "You are not going back to that club. You are not paying him a single dollar. And you are not going to let him threaten you or anyone you love. Do you understand?" "But Julian, I have lawyers, Kai, the best in the city, and I have friends in places that would make Damon's head spin. He doesn't get to touch you. He doesn't get to control you. Not anymore. You can't just make him disappear. No, but I can make him regret ever thinking he had power over you." Kai's eyes were wide, his breath coming in short gasps. I could see the fear in him, the years of trauma and desperation and survival instinct telling him to run, to hide, to protect himself at all costs. But I could also see something else, something that looked like hope. "You're not alone anymore," I said softly. You don't have to fight by yourself. I'm here, Kai. I'm not going anywhere. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against mine. What did I do to deserve you? He whispered. Nothing. That's the point. You don't have to earn love, Kai. You just have to let yourself feel it. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of gratitude, and I kissed him back, pouring every promise I'd ever made into that single moment. I would protect him. I would keep him safe. And I would spend the rest of my life making sure he never had to be afraid again. Chapter 9. The Confrontation. Damon showed up a week later. I was at work, in the middle of a board meeting, when my phone buzzed with a text from Kai. He's here, at the mansion. He won't leave. I was out of my chair and running before anyone could ask questions. The drive from the office to the mansion usually took 20 minutes. I made it in 12, running red lights and probably breaking every traffic law in the city. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, my mind racing with possibilities. All of them bad. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Damon's car parked right in front of the main entrance. A sleek black sedan, ostentatious and ugly, just like the man who drove it. I didn't bother knocking. I walked straight through the front door, which was unlocked, which made my blood boil, and found them in the living room. Damon was standing by the fireplace, his arms crossed over his chest, a smug smile on his face. He was tall and broad, with a shaved head and a diamond stud in one ear. Everything about him screamed, thug in a designer suit. And Kai was on the couch, curled into himself, looking small and terrified and so young it broke my heart. Julian, Damon said, his smile widening. So nice of you to join us. I was just having a conversation with your little friend here about the nature of debts. I walked past him without a word, going straight to Kai. I sat down on the couch next to him, putting myself between him and Damon. Are you okay? I asked quietly. Kai nodded, but I could see the trembling in his hands. You need to leave, I said, turning to face Damon. Now. I don't think I do. Damon uncrossed his arms, spreading them wide. You see, Kai and I have a contract, a legally binding agreement that says he owes me $50,000 for training and services rendered. And until that debt is paid, I have every right to collect. I've seen the contract, I said. It's not worth the paper it's printed on. You took advantage of a desperate kid, and any judge in the city would throw it out. Maybe, but going to court would be so messy, wouldn't it? All those lovely details about Kai's employment, the dancing, the private rooms, the things he did for money. Damon's smile turned predatory. I wonder what his parents would think, his classmates, his future employers. You're a bastard, Kai whispered. I'm a businessman. There's a difference. Damon pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, tossing it onto the coffee table. $50,000 by the end of the month, or I start making calls. It's that simple. I stood up, moving until I was standing directly in front of him. I had a few inches on him, though he was broader. But I'd learned long ago that intimidation wasn't about size. It was about certainty. You're going to take that envelope and you're going to leave, I said, my voice low and cold. And then you're going to forget that Kai-chin ever existed. You're going to tear up whatever contract you think you have, and you're going to walk away. Or what? Or I'll destroy you. Damon laughed. You? What are you going to do? Sue me? No. I'm going to ruin you. I took a step closer, close enough that I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I have investigators, Damon, the best money can buy. In 48 hours, I'll know every secret you've ever tried to hide. The tax evasion, the money laundering, the dancers you've coerced into doing things they didn't want to do. I'll find it all, and I'll bury you so deep you'll never see daylight again. You're bluffing. Try me. For a long moment, we stared at each other. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I could feel Kai's eyes on my back, could hear his shaky breathing. Then Damon smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. He picked up the envelope, tucking it back into his jacket. He looked at Kai, then at me, and something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like fear. You've made an enemy today, Vane. I've made a lot of enemies. You're not special. Damon left. The front door slammed behind him, and a moment later, I heard his car engine start and the crunch of tires on gravel. And then it was over. I turned back to Kai, my heart still pounding. He was crying, silent tears streaming down his cheeks. But he was smiling too. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't have to thank me. I know." He stood up, walking into my arms. "That's why I'm doing it anyway." I held him tight, burying my face in his hair. He smelled like home, like safety, like everything I'd been searching for without knowing it. "I love you," I said. "I love you too," he replied. "Now can we please get out of here? I don't want to be in this room anymore." "Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere. Everywhere. Just away. With you." I grabbed my keys and we left. Chapter 10, The Beginning. We drove for hours. I didn't have a destination in mind. Just the open road and Kai in the passenger seat beside me, his hand in mine. We talked about nothing and everything. About his father, who was recovering well and asking when he could meet the mysterious benefactor who'd saved his life. About my mother, who'd left when I was 12 and never looked back. About the future and what it might hold. "I should probably go back to my apartment at some point," Kai said as we watched the sun set over the highway. "I can't live in your mansion forever." "Why not?" "Because it's your mansion, not ours." I glanced at him, my heart skipping. What if it was ours? "What do you mean?" I pulled the car over to the side of the road, turning to face him. What if you stayed? Not for a month. Not until graduation. Forever. What if you moved in and we figured out how to make this work? Kai stared at me, his eyes wide. "Julian, I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other for a month. But I've never felt this way about anyone, Kai. I've never wanted to wake up next to someone every morning. I've never looked at someone and thought, this is it. This is my person. But with you." I trailed off, suddenly nervous. What if I don't want a month? What if I want a year and another year and every year after that? What if I want to build something real with you? Kai was quiet for a long time. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the fading light, he looked like something out of a dream. "You're insane," he said finally. "I know. You're reckless and impulsive, and you have no idea what you're getting into. I know that too. You're going to wake up one day and realize you made a terrible mistake, and I'm going to be heartbroken. Kai, I'm going to say yes anyway." I blinked. "What?" He laughed. That real laugh, the one that crinkled his eyes. I said I'm going to say yes anyway, because I'm just as insane as you are. Because I've been falling for you since the first time you tipped me $500 and didn't ask for anything in return. Because you make me feel safe and seen and loved. You are loved. I know. He leaned across the console, cupping my face in his hands. "I know, Julian. That's why I'm staying." He kissed me then, soft and slow and full of promise. And when we finally pulled apart, both of us breathless and smiling, I knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead. Damon wasn't the type to disappear quietly. Kai's parents would have questions. The world would have opinions. And we still had so much to learn about each other. So many obstacles to overcome. But sitting there on the side of the road, holding Kai's hand as the stars came out one by one, I wasn't afraid. Because for the first time in my life I wasn't alone. And neither was he. 6 months later, the mansion didn't feel empty anymore. Kai had filled it with his things, his books, his playlists, his terrible taste in reality TV. Machi had joined us after his parents admitted they couldn't keep up with her energy. And now the dog slept at the foot of our bed, snoring softly. The internship had ended, but the job offer hadn't. Kai was now a full-time employee at Vanguard, and he was good at it. Better than good. He had a natural instinct for numbers, a way of seeing patterns that I envied. And when he walked through the office, people didn't see the dancer from Obsidian. They saw the rising star, the one to watch, the man who'd clawed his way up from nothing. Damon had tried to make trouble. He'd sent letters, made threats, even showed up at the office once. But my lawyers had been faster, and his club was now under investigation for a dozen different violations. He wouldn't be bothering anyone for a long time. Kai's father was healthy. The money had covered everything, the hospital bills, the follow-up appointments, even a small cushion for emergencies. And when Kai had finally told his parents the truth, not all of it, but enough. His mother had cried and his father had hugged him, and they both said they were proud of him. They'd met me last weekend. It had been awkward and wonderful, full of too much food and too many questions, and a moment where Kai's father had pulled me aside and said, "If you hurt him, I'll kill you." I told him I wouldn't. He'd believed me. Tonight we were sitting on the patio, the same patio where we'd had our first real fight, where Kai had told me about his father, where we'd said, "I love you," for the first time. Kai was curled against my side, Machi at his feet, a blanket wrapped around both of us. The city glittered below, a sea of lights that stretched to the horizon. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me. For not looking away when I told you who I really was. For staying." I pressed a kiss to the top of his head. "Thank you for letting me." He tilted his face up to look at me, and in the dim light, his eyes were the color of honey. "I love you, Julian. I love you too, Kai." And as the city hummed below us and the stars wheeled overhead, I realized that this was what I'd been looking for all along. Not a transaction, not an arrangement, not a deal. Just us, just love, just the beginning of forever.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep enjoying BL stories with Webtoon BL.